following podcast contains language that may be inappropriate for younger listeners and covers topics that could be controversial or offensive to some. If you're the former, I'm sorry. If you're the latter, I'm sorry for you. Rated M for mature.
Hello, friend. Welcome. Or welcome back. Either way, know I appreciate you. In this episode, I want to talk about state. So state, as we're going to address it today, would be a noun. The particular condition that someone or something is in at a specific time. This can apply to your mental state, your emotional state, or your physical state. So this episode is going to be more about personal health. And we're going to focus more on the mental and the emotional, although what we talk about will apply to the physical version of state. So we're going to address individual states, so a micro look, if you will, and then your overall sense of fulfillment in life. So the macro view. You can, and I think everyone who's listening to this now has, at one point in time or another, felt blah, meh, miserable, down, in the dumps, like things just weren't going your way, whether that was in the entirety of your life or in a particular instance. And for this episode, we're gonna refer to that as a suffering state. And there's a couple things you can do, 3 to be exact, when you find yourself in a suffering state. And the first thing is, you can do nothing. Now, I would not recommend doing nothing, as if you do nothing and expect there to be a change, you're probably wrong. However, it is possible that that particular instance will run its course. The next thing you can do, you can change your expectation. Are you in a suffering state because you had unrealistic expectations versus the results you're actually seeing? And because you're not achieving your expected result, you are now suffering. The other option you have is to change your environment. So that could be turn on some music, upbeat music. Could be as extreme as completely leave the situation you find yourself in. Now, we're very early into this podcast and very quickly touched on the 3 things. As we move through this, we will dive deeper into those things and how they pertain to certain situations. But I did want to get out there with, here are your 3 options when you find yourself in a suffering state, whether that is a micro version or a macro version of suffering. So again, you can do nothing and hope it runs its course. You can change your expectation to be more realistic to the situation, or you can change your environment, remove yourself from whatever it is that is causing you to suffer, or remove the cause of the suffering if you can identify it. So state can be impacted by internal and external factors. Our mind is a very powerful thing. Its ability to control our physical reaction, our physical well-being is unbelievable. If you talk to people in the medical profession that have been around death, I'm sure you'll hear any number of stories of people that made it through a holiday or held on until a particular benchmark, an anniversary, a birthday, made it to a point where a family member from out of town made it in to be able to say goodbye. And I think this has a direct correlation to the mind's ability to impact your physical and keep you going. And I don't necessarily know that it's a conscious decision as much as it is subconsciously that someone on their deathbed, potentially even someone that's not cognitive at that point in time, that would know, don't die on Christmas and ruin Christmas for everyone going forward. I believe that is the power of the human mind and its ability to control what actually occurs physically. Um, and I don't think we can underestimate the power of that, both positive and negative. So, my previous boss used the term unkind mind quite frequently, and I believe it's very accurate. As humans, we tend to focus on the negative, and it's very easy to complain about things or focus on loss or less. Go online, and what you see is just this toxic pool of negativity because that's easy. It is easy to complain and bitch and moan and groan about things versus being positive and upbeat and seeing the bright side. And part of that is human nature. It is based on thousands or hundreds of thousands or millions based on your particular belief system worth of evolution. The human brain is designed to focus on the worst case scenario, and it is because being prepared for the worst case is what kept us alive in a very hostile environment, right? We are the top of the food chain now. We are the apex predator because we figured out ways to give ourselves the advantage. But early in our evolutionary journey, we were not. We are very frail and weak compared to the other creatures on this planet. So our mind was hardwired to always be on the lookout for the danger, to process the, again, worst case scenario. And now that we don't need that, it is still there. It's how we function. It's why, again, we tend to focus on the negative unless we train ourselves not to or make a concerted effort not to. Our default position is the negative, right? Oh my God, what's going to happen? And that thought process, the way our brain works, has emotional and physical ramifications to it. It impacts our state. Let's look at a particular phenomenon that I'm sure we've all experienced: the nervous poops. You are at the airport and about to board, and all of a sudden your stomach just gets all jacked up and you have to go to the bathroom. You have a dental appointment or a doctor's appointment, and your stomach all of a sudden gets jacked up and you have to go to the bathroom. And this is because your brain is processing the worst case scenarios and you have become nervous about something that you don't necessarily need to be nervous about. Physical impact based off of an unkind mind. And again, you don't consciously make the decision to say, oh my God, I'm going to focus on the fact that this plane is going to fall out of the sky, because logically that is less likely to happen than you getting into a car accident on your way to work. But I'm about to get on a plane that's going to go tens of thousands of feet into the air, and oh my God, it's going to fall. And now I've got to poop. So, how can we take that knowledge of the power of our mind and use it to help impact our state? So, Tony Robbins, who, and if you don't know, Tony Robbins is kind of the self help motivational speaker guru. I don't know that I believe in everything that he talks about, but he has, over the course of his career, which spans decades at this point, sat down with some very successful and powerful people and been able to combine all the things that make them who they are and come up with this overarching class system, and that he applies to business and personal. But he will tell you that he can change his state in 90 seconds. Now, I don't know that if in a minute and a half it is realistic to believe that you are changing your state. He says it. I'm not going to argue with his ability to do it. I can tell you that I cannot change my state in 90 seconds. I am not that evolved. But I do believe in what he says of our ability to change our state. We control it. And part of it is replacing that sense of loss that is, or potential loss, as it were, with a viewpoint of gratitude. So, what do I have to be thankful for versus what am I potentially going to lose? And, boil that down to more simple terms. It's don't focus on the negative, focus on the positive. Which again is very difficult for us. That is a choice. We have to make that. I think even the most positive person on the planet, that in their most alone moments with their thoughts, will default to worst case scenario thinking. Again, it's evolutionary, it's hardwired into our brain. We have to make the choice to focus on the positives. What do we have to be grateful for? So there are 3 ways to accomplish this, to quote unquote master it, if you will. And there is cognitive mastery, meaning you have to understand it. There is emotional mastery, meaning that you have to feel it. And there's physical mastery, meaning you have to do it. So we can talk about this subject all we want to, and potentially that will give you the cognitive mastery, meaning that you understand it. And go back to the beginning of this, and we talk about the 3 ways to change it, the 3 actions you can take, which is no action at all, let it run its course and hope it works out for the best. The change your expectation or change your environment. And the more we talk about it, that provides us with the cognitive mastery of understanding it. The emotional mastery will come because I can feel the change. I can feel the impact if I practice these things, which will happen after the physical mastery of doing it. I can tell you that I like to think I have the cognitive mastery. I'm still working on the physical mastery of this, that doing it is not the easiest thing in the world. I have to truly sit down and think about it to make myself run through the steps to help impact change. Example I'll give you is this podcast. This will be episode 6. So we're a month and a half into this. And I can tell you that to this moment of recording, I'm at 130 listens across the 5 previously released episodes. If I went into this with an expectation of I was going to have, at this point, thousands of listens, and that 126, 130 was the number, I would be in a suffering state. And I can tell you initially, I really did have an expectation of, oh, I'm going to get hundreds of listens relatively quickly. And I had to temper that expectation. I had to make a choice to look at it after the first 1 or 2 episodes and look at how it was trending. What was I doing to support it? And was my expectation of 100 times somebody was going to listen to one of these episodes on a newly released podcast from someone that nobody knows anything about? And it was me having an unrealistic expectation. So I tempered that. I realigned my expectation, and I can tell you that now my state as it pertains to this podcast is substantially better. I average about 25 listeners per episode. The highest one is Left, Right, and Center with 40 at this point. And I can tell you I'm ecstatic. It makes me very happy. Doing this makes me happy. My expectation is not to get famous off of this. It is not to have hundreds of thousands of followers that are just every Saturday morning waiting for the newest episode to come out because they can't live without it. It is, do I enjoy what I'm doing? Am I talking to a core audience that keeps coming back? Do I keep you guys engaged? And as long as that continues to be the case, then I am in a very positive state as it pertains to this podcast. So again, making sure your expectation is right impacts your state. I understand it. The physical mastery was I had to consciously make the decision to do it, but I can tell you emotional mastery is that I feel it. I enjoy sitting down. There is no pressure of I have to deliver a product that will satisfy 100,000, 200,000 people because I don't have an expectation that 100,000, 200,000 people are going to be listening to it. So when we talk about that, what we're looking at really here there is me shifting from a place of, oh my God, loss. I didn't achieve this massive success early to a viewpoint of, or an attitude of gratitude that I have on average 25 people that do tune in every time to listen to this, that there is support. I am grateful for the fact that I do have an audience. I'm grateful for the fact that I have a platform that I can come on and I can talk about things that people seem to enjoy listening to. So that attitude of gratitude changes that suffering state of loss and moves it to one of keep going, I'm doing okay. Now, let's move from a micro situation to a macro, right? How do I know what my overall state is? And I'm a math guy, I'm a numbers guy. There is a math formula to help you figure out what your overall state is, and that is your life conditions are equal to or greater than your core expectations. So what does that mean? If my core expectation is that I am going to have a 7-figure a year income and live in a 10,000 square foot mansion and own 12 cars and have a private jet, then my life conditions are not equal to or greater than that. I am equal to or less than that, meaning that I would be suffering overall in my life. My overall life conditions would be one of a suffering state because they do not meet or exceed the core expectations I have for my life. Now, that's not the case. I don't have expectations of a 7-figure income and 10,000 square foot mansion and, well, maybe 12 cars. But anybody that knows me knows I like cars. And if I could, I guess I would. And maybe I'm suffering a little on that front, but I digress. The reality is that I truly believe that right now my life conditions are not even equal to, they are substantially greater than my core expectations. That overall, I have a wonderful life. And I am very grateful for that. I have a beautiful wife who is supportive of the endeavors that I'm taking on, the recent changes that I've gone through. I have a charity that I co-founded with a partner that is supportive, and we're finding ways to give back. And I think that it is exceeding all expectations that we had for it in the short period of time that we've been involved. I've got 4 beautiful children that, for all of the missteps that I've made as a parent, are productive members of society and overall good people. I've got a beautiful granddaughter who, again, right, wrong, or indifferent, is my favorite person on the planet. That may change as she gets bigger, but right now she is my favorite person on the planet. I would tell you that, and I hate to use this term, but I'm going to, I'm very blessed, quote, blessed, um, with my life. So I would tell you my overall state is one of happiness and joy. I have a very good overall state. That is not to say that I don't go into suffering states for things. My unkind mind will still impact me in individual situations. We'll be right back after this quick break.
I just don't get it. I work hard, I go to school, I pay my bills on time. So why can't I get approved for a new car? It's like no matter what I do, I'm always struggling to make ends meet. My wife and I, we thought we were doing everything right. We saved up for a down payment. We have good credit scores. But the home buying process is just so confusing. We're lost in a sea of paperwork, drowning in a whirlpool of jargon and numbers that make no sense to us. How are we supposed to navigate this treacherous terrain without a guide? Financial literacy is a huge issue, one that affects so many of us. We need help, guidance, someone to show us the way out of this maze of financial insecurity. That's why Financial Foundations of Virginia is here to offer us a lifeline in our time of need, to teach us the skills and knowledge we need to build a solid financial future, to break free from the chains of debt and uncertainty. It's time to take control of our finances to build a foundation that will support us for years to come. Visit us at financialfoundationsofvirginia.org or like and follow on Facebook and Instagram.
And now back to our show. So how can we look at those individual situations and apply the three things we can do to help change our state during those micro moments? So an internal factor, we've talked about it, our unkind mind focusing on less and changing the expectation, the example I used of the podcast. You may find yourself in a work environment, right? Or on a job that you are feeling less than fulfilled and you dread getting up in the morning. Is that a unrealistic expectation case? Is it a case of you needing to change your environment, meaning that you need to go and find a new job? It could be one, the other, it could be both, right? You have to examine the situation. You control it. You know what the things are that are impacting you. That you believe you should be the CEO of the company you work for. Well, there are 1,000 employees, and you currently work the cash register at your job, but your expectation is to be the CEO. Well, you're going to be in a suffering state if that is your expectation and your current position is working a register. And odds are you're going to be in that suffering state for an extended period of time because you have unrealistic expectations regarding where you should be in that job. So what are your choices? You can change the expectation that says, okay, I want to be the assistant manager, and you work toward that goal. And then you do it in steps, and now your suffering state, you're not going to focus on the loss of or perceived less of not being the CEO. You'll have an expectation that is more in line with what you want to be. The other side is that your expectation is one that you want to get promoted, and you believe that you have displayed the competencies to get promoted, that you have displayed the skills, both people and job aptitude to get promoted, but you're not getting promoted for whatever reason. You can change your environment, meaning I have value in or outside of this company. I know what I bring to the table, and you change the job that you work for to a place that has a culture more inclined with and promote from within, where now it is your environment that changes, not your expectation, because your expectation wasn't unrealistic. The environment you were in didn't allow for the growth. So you moved to one that did. Suffering state is gone. Now, there is a science to achievement. And in this case, when we're talking about achievement, we're talking about what you achieve, right? So, what are the three forces of creation for achievement? So, there's grace, air quotes, grace, which is God, luck, the universe. It just happened. I don't know why it happened, oh, but it's there. So, grace as a force of creation for your achievement. There is focus. So, power of clarity and commitment, meaning I know what I want to achieve, I have clarity of it, and I am committed to making that happen. Anything that you focus on changes, whether that is a tangible result. So, I want my sales performance to improve. So, I focus on improving my sales performance. It will get better just because you focused on it. The third force of creation is massive action. So effective execution. You would usually combine massive action with focus to get the most optimal result. But massive action in and amongst itself is a force of creation and will lead to achievement. How do those things impact state? Well, you apply them to the concept of an attitude of gratitude. So if I focus, I go for the power of clarity and commitment to making sure I'm I'm focused on what I'm grateful for, not what I believe I don't have. That sense of loss or less. Now I focus on it. That's the way that I drive myself, is to be more grateful for the things I have versus longing for the things that I don't. I use the force of creation to help maintain a positive state. I take massive action. The effective execution of ensuring that you have that attitude of gratitude is that every morning I'm going to sit down and I'm going to list three things that I'm grateful for. I'll reference my previous boss that he starts his morning with breath work, um, the Wim Hof method, and during that he seeks to gain focus. Right, he leverages the focus force of creation. That through the breath work, he focuses to get clarity on what it is he wants to accomplish for the day, and part of that is laying out his plan for massive action. What meetings is he going to schedule to to be able to address the topics that he prioritized during that breath work? I can tell you that he aspires to have a culture of inspirational leadership, not perspirational leadership within his company. I use the word aspires because it is a commendable goal, and he would tell you if he were here that he has not achieved that to the level that he wants it to be at. But it is an area of focus that they have taken on as a company under his leadership, a mission statement, if you will, that focus on better, not bitter. Now, that is a great concept, and I respect him for having that as a vision to lead his company under. The a year and a half ago launched a leadership engagement course for continuing development of all the management levels and above within the company, that focus on empathetic leadership and how to be an inspirational leader versus a perspirational leader. It will take time. I truly believe that because it is an area of focus, the company will get there. And they have taken the massive action, creating the course, to actually achieve that. They're not relying on the grace We'll just let God, luck, or the universe make it happen. They've focused on it. They've taken massive action to try to deploy it, and I commend them for that. They Again, it's going to take time, and I think too often the suffering state will creep in when you look at things that happen within the company that don't align with the idea of we are an empathetic company that thinks with our heart, that focuses on inspiring people versus perspirational leadership. And that has to do with the expectations not being realistic. That we created this class a year and a half ago. Why aren't we there yet? Because it takes time, and you're dealing with people. Now, perspirational leadership leverages that fundamental brain function of loss, right? The fear of losing something as a motivator to get people to perform. There's a reason lots of companies are more perspirational than they are inspirational. You can point to that as a way to get the desired result. There's currently a lot of discussion regarding Cloudflare and the tactics deployed by their sales force to get people to move from a pro plan or a business plan to an enterprise plan. And nefarious tactics, seedy, dirty, of sending emails or claiming violations that would require you to interact with their trust and safety department, and then you schedule that meeting to find out what the violations were, and you end up on the phone with salespeople that are telling you you have to sign up for the enterprise plan, and if you don't, these are the things that'll happen. And the more that's been dug into this, the more they found that the CEO of Cloudflare had released a statement publicly that said their growth over the previous 3 years had been more of a because it happened growth, not because his people were good growth. That it was, to use his metaphor, shooting fish in a barrel. You don't have to be a good fisherman if the fish are jumping into the boat. And because they happen to offer services or solutions that there was a huge demand for, they experienced exponential growth. And as the market demand slowed, their growth slowed. And what they found was that about 80% of their sales force contributed less than 4% of the total volume of sales. And they made a decision to cycle those people out and put very aggressive goals and expectations in place. So if you have the CEO publicly stating that we're going to get rid of the dead weight, I have a bunch of underperformers, we're going to get rid of them, and if you don't perform, you're not going to be here, that's a perspirational message. And to achieve the result, what happened was the sales force decided they were going to do whatever to satisfy the goals needed because they didn't want to experience the loss. Inspirational leadership would have found a different way to present that. And I'm not a huge fan of win-win, but I do understand the concept of what's in it for them, right? That instead of focusing on the negative consequences that go with lack of result or bad choices, you focus on the positives. Now, that's not to say that negatives don't exist, right? We know with everything there is either an implied or an inferred loss associated if you don't do something. But if you make the focus on inspiring people to be better versus threatening them if they're not, it's a healthier, more productive environment for everyone. And ultimately, everyone wants to feel fulfilled. Our main driving force in life is a sense of fulfillment. Did I contribute something to work, to my relationship, to insert whatever here? fulfillment is highly important, and providing people a path to feeling fulfilled is something we should be trying to do. So the art of fulfillment can be boiled down to kind of a statement that success without fulfillment is the ultimate failure. So you can achieve high levels of success, and your definition of success may vary. Some people define success by materialistic things. Some people define success by money itself. Some people define success by achieving positions or celebrity. But to truly be fulfilled, we must grow. We have to continue to grow in order to feel fulfilled. We also have to have something to give, right? You'll never feel fulfilled if you're not giving something to someone, right? That it's a very hollow feeling to be selfish and only focused on you and what you have to gain. Uh, you have to deliver value to others in some way, shape, form, or fashion. If you can achieve that sense of fulfillment, that you know the things you're doing are making you grow as a person, that you have not stagnated, and that you have something to offer others, you will feel fulfilled and you'll gain true success. So again, let's go back to the math formula, if you will. Life conditions equal to or greater than your core expectations. So expectations has kind of been the theme across this. It shows up in the steps you can take to impact your individual micro state. It is there to impact your macro state. The science of achievement will hinge on the expectations that you set forth, right? And being able to focus or act on those expectations. You need to keep in mind that the more realistic the expectation that you have, the better your state is going to be, the more success you're going to feel that you've achieved, because you're actually meeting those expectations or you're exceeding those expectations. Now, I am not saying set the bar so low that you can trip over it, right? They need to be realistic expectations, right? But they don't need to be so lofty that you can never achieve them. It has to be realistic. And if we go back to kind of business practices and how you would set a goal for someone else, you have to make sure they are realistic and achievable, right? The same thing applies when you're setting an expectation for yourself. Realistic and achievable expectations. You still want to strive to exceed those things, and then once you achieve or meet those expectations, you want to reset the expectation, right? Never ever become complacent or content with that kind of level of success. And I do believe that happens, but it can lead to a whole new problem with state, right? That you've stagnated, and now that meh kind of blah feeling takes over again because you're not growing. You should constantly be driven to grow. So I really feel like these are important things to talk about. That how can we impact our own lives, and this whole concept can be applied to how you can help impact others. I'm not so certain that we really have the ability to impact others' state necessarily in a consistently positive way, because and my thought behind that is because we're not really prepared at this point to impact our own states in a consistently positive way. right? We got to figure it out for ourselves before we figure out how to do it for others. But it's not that hard in theory, right? Cognitive mastery, hopefully understanding it, we gain just through conversations like this, talking about it. I would encourage you to go out and look. There are people more intelligent than I in these topics that have videos or articles or books on this. You know, I referenced Tony Robbins. He is not the only one. Um, but get a baseline understanding to make sure that you have the cognitive mastery. You do this thing a couple of times and you'll get the emotional mastery. You'll feel it. There is a tangible impact. You will feel the shift, but it does require the physical mastery of doing it. And I can tell you that I still struggle with that part. Again, the physical mastery, doing it consistently to make sure you don't allow yourself to fall into and stay in the suffering state. Suffering is going to happen. Loss is real. It's unavoidable. It is a part of life. It's how you let that loss impact you and how long you stay in that state that's important. So I really hope that you've garnered something from this, that you found this to be informative or helpful in some way. As always, I do appreciate you coming by and hanging out with me for a little while. So until next time, remember, affect change. Don't let change affect you. I'm out.